So, welcome to the second part. We want to look at the line of the third woe now and want to lay it on the structure of Boston, Concord, Exeter. The fourth waymark is the closed door or the fulfillment of an event. In my presentations from last year, I have tried to show that when the first and second woe is the literal Ottoman Empire, then the third woe must be the spiritual Ottoman Empire. The spiritual Ottoman Empire are not the Taliban, not Hamas, not Iran, or any other group, but it is the so-called Caliphate of the Islamic State. It's a worldwide spiritual movement. They are the third woe or the resurrection of the Ottoman Empire. I have explained this in much more details in my 5-part series from March 2024. So the third woe begins to prepare through events in the Middle East between 1840 and 1989. 1989 ends with an enormous success for the Mujahideen because they are able to defeat one of the two world superpowers at that time, the Soviet Union. The global jihadism transfers from the Mujahideen to Al-Qaeda and then to ISIS. You can check my studies from March for more background. In order to understand if the third woe will be seen at the Sunday law, we need to lay that history on our structure of Boston, Concord, and Exeter. 1989 is Boston. A reform line for the spiritual Ottoman Empire has begun. When we want to understand 2001, we have to understand Boston, Concord, Exeter. From 1989, the third woe is in their final steps to begin the war against the King of the North. After bringing the superpower of the Soviet Union to crumble, the movement that formed out of the Mujahideen in Afghanistan felt strong enough to defeat the other remaining superpower, the USA. Their mission was to raise up the modern Ottoman Empire in order to torment and conquer the modern army of Rome, in order to take revenge for the crusade of the Roman Empire. Even they understand that it's not literal, but spiritual Rome now. In 1989, after their victory over the Soviet Union, the idea of jihad was empowered. It was a starting point of their mission. In Afghanistan, the international jihadist movement flourished. They had built up prophecy schools and training camps, which leads us to the next waymark, Concord. 91 is Concord. Osama bin Laden flees from Saudi Arabia to Afghanistan. They start the jihadist movement, Al-Qaeda. Their main mission is to fight against the USA. In 91, their movement has an increase of knowledge about their mission. 2 years later, in 93, there was the first attack on the World Trade Center in New York. Wikipedia says about that attack that they wanted to use a larger quantity of explosives to bring down the North Tower and cause it to collapse onto the South Tower. But there were not enough explosives available for this. So this was a first attempt to bring both towers of the World Trade Center to fall. Our next waymark is 96, Exeter. Exeter is a formalization, a foretaste, a warning, a message, a visualization, a prophecy of the upcoming event. Bin Laden went to Sudan in 1992 to spread his ideology in Africa, but in 96, he came back to Afghanistan. So both in 91 and in 96, he came to Afghanistan. In that year, he issued the founding manifesto of Al-Qaeda, where he officially declared the war on the USA. He formulated his message. It was a so-called fatwa, which is basically an Islamic law issued by a cleric. He made it an obligation for everyone who professes to be a faithful Muslim to take part in that war, like a divine commandment. So this is the formalization of the message. It's the prediction of what they are going to do at the next waymark. You can find this document of 96 on the 9/11 Memorial website. In 98, he issued another fatwa, and there he said, kill the Americans and their allies. This one you can also find on the 9/11.
Looks like she froze. We'll give it a minute and see what she comes back.
Oh, for a moment, I thought it was my internet. Thank God.
Yeah, she's probably logging back in. We'll give her just a minute.
I don't know what happened. Okay, I'm sorry. I had an internet issue, I think.
No problem.
So,
thank you very much. Glad you made it back.
okay. So we talked about 96 Exeter and about the escalation. They declared war against the USA in 96. This was the formalization of their message. They doubled down on it in 98, repeated it. It was an escalation of the message. And they showed already, they gave a foretaste of what they are capable to do with attacks on the US embassies in Tanzania and Kenya. So let me check where it was. Yeah, so it is a clear characteristic of Exeter, gets louder and louder. Now, 2001 is the final waymark. It is the fulfillment of what was predicted in 96. Bin Laden predicted we will attack the USA. In 2001, it was realized. I think in this dispensation, the structure of Boston, Concord, Exeter is very clearly seen. It is one story, it is cause and effect. Not only Osama bin Laden predicted what he will do, but also the US intelligence service knew it in advance. George Bush was warned that bin Laden was planning a big attack in the USA. They had certain details about the plan, and they knew it was imminent. This article from Foreign Affairs, you might have read it already. It was written in June 2024, and they write, from his confirmation hearing to become Director of Central Intelligence in May 1997 until September 11, 2001, George Tenet was sounding an alarm about Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda. So they are speaking here about the time period between Exeter and 2001. It is the warning and prophesying of the coming event. In those 4 years, before Al-Qaeda operators attacked the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, Tenet testified publicly no fewer than 10 times about the threat the group posed to US interests at home and abroad. There is not the slightest doubt that Osama bin Laden is planning further attacks against us. In early 2000, he warned Congress again that bin Laden was foremost among these terrorists because of the immediacy and seriousness of the threat he poses, and because of his ability to strike without additional warning. Al-Qaeda's next attacks, Tenet said, could be simultaneous and spectacular. In private, Tenet was even more assertive. So at the end, the last sentence here, the CIA and the FBI may not have uncovered the time, place, or method of the 9/11 plot, but Tenet's warnings were prophetic. So this is a clear Exeter. It's a prophecy. Now, 2001 is the final endpoint of that dispensation, and a new dispensation begins. It is Boston. It points to the Sunday low waymark on the line of the 144,000, or to 2014 on the line of the fractals. At 9/11, the army of Rome was attacked by the third woe. The third woe officially began on that date. Al-Qaeda was able to terribly hurt the other superpower, the USA. As a consequence, on October 7, the USA invaded Afghanistan and the war on terror began. Jihadists say it's the beginning of the modern crusade against Islam. On November 9, the Taliban were defeated, but terrorism was not at all defeated. In 2003, the US invaded Iraq and overthrew the regime. Many soldiers got unemployed and joined the jihadists. Boston is the beginning of a story that develops and escalates until 2014. Al-Qaeda's jihad against the Crusaders continues in Europe. In 2004 and 2005, there are big attacks in Spain and UK after the pattern of 9/11. From 2004 until 2008, the Islamic State in Iraq is built up. In that time, they publish important scriptures which form the future character of the Islamic State. I would consider this time period as the progressive increase of knowledge about their mission. In 2011, bin Laden is killed under Obama. The Syrian civil war begins and jihadism grows extremely. The Islamic State in Syria rises. Now, 2012 is Exeter. It's a formalization. For the first time, the caliphate of ISIS in Iraq is proclaimed. Jihadism officially transfers to ISIS as main actor. Al-Qaeda remains, but is not that powerful and not that international as ISIS. They begin to conquer territory and recruit a lot of enthusiasts from many countries. The civil war in Syria and the US invasion in Iraq played an important part in this further development. In 2012, Hillary Clinton wrote in her emails that were published on WikiLeaks that she is aware of what will happen when they work together with rebels and jihadists to fight against Assad in Syria. They are fully aware that this will strengthen ISIS, but the fight against Assad was more important to the US because it was also a fight against Assad and its ally, Russia. So Exeter is a preview of what will happen next. It's a warning. 2012, the Islamic State of Iraq was proclaimed for the first time, but it was still regional and pointed to a much bigger event. In 2014, the global Islamic State was proclaimed. Historians call this the most spectacular event since 9/11. There's much to say about that event, but I will summarize it with this quote by Gilles Kepel. The clashes in the first 6 months of 2014 culminated in an event that can be considered the most spectacular of international jihadism after the 9/11 attacks, the proclamation of the caliphate. So he is bookending 2001 and 2014. From 2001, the story develops until its climax in 2014. ISIS was on its height. They conquered many parts of Syria and parts of Iraq. thousands of people from many countries, including Western countries, converted to Islam. They spread their doctrine very successfully through social media and reached thousands. So 2012 pointed to 2014, and 2014 is our first Sunday low waymark. The historian Robert Mani writes in his book, The Mind of the Islamic State, shortly after, ISIS shortened its name to the Islamic State in 2014 and declared that the centuries-old caliphate abolished in 1924 by the Turkish President Kemal Atatürk was now reborn. So in other words, he is talking about the Ottoman Empire that fell in 1840 according to prophecy and was finally abolished in 1924. And this caliphate is now reborn in 2014 in ISIS. That means the Ottoman Empire was now officially reborn in 2014 in the Caliphate of the Islamic State. Yeah, we can also compare it with the first and second woe. The literal Ottoman Empire is now reborn in the third woe in ISIS. A new dispensation begins with 2014, which is Boston, pointing to 2019. In 2014, the Islamic State was on their climax in regards to occupied territory in Syria and Iraq. Since then, the King of the South and North fought strongly against ISIS in Syria and took back these territories. The war on terror intensified. 2014 to 19 was a decline for them in regards to territory, but ideologically it was a further rise. We need to consider that it is a spiritual kingdom that they are building. Their ideology is spread worldwide. In these years, ISIS commit many attacks in France, Germany, USA, and Russia, and a large number of refugees come to Europe, and the European governments are challenged enormously. Right-wing parties use it to spread populism and get more votes. Now, 2016 is their increase of knowledge. They published in their official magazine a declaration of war to kill any disbeliever. This is a call to worldwide jihad. So they had their increase of knowledge about their mission in 2016. In 2018, Exeter, we should see what will happen in 2019. It's connected to the fight between the King of the South and the King of the North, the fight over spheres of influence, and heading to Russia in 2019. In 2018, Putin and Trump made a deal. The US withdraw their troops from Syria and Afghanistan and remove the sanctions on Russian oligarchs. End of 2018, Trump announces the troop withdrawal from Syria, but he was warned that this will be a huge mistake. There are some articles about this. You can go to them also later. The Trump administration says US troops are being withdrawn from Syria after the president said the Islamic State group has been defeated. Senator Lindsey Graham called it a huge Obama-like mistake. In a series of tweets, he said ISIS was not defeated and warned withdrawing US troops puts our allies, the Kurds, at risk. This Vox article also writes about this, that Trump received warnings from several places what could happen when he will withdraw the troops from Syria. Al Jazeera wrote that it's a bad idea. US defense and military leaders were trying to dissuade him from ordering the withdrawal right up until the last minute. Lindsey Graham said it's a disaster in the making. The biggest winners in this are ISIS and Iran. It strengthened Russia and Iran. Marco Rubio called the move a grave error. This is a bad idea because it goes against the fight against ISIS and potentially helps ISIS, he said. So Exeter 2018 was a prediction for what happened in 2019. They knew that the US withdrawal from Syria will strengthen Russia and also ISIS. Trump brought Putin the victory. In 2018, Rafah was predicted, and it is directly connected with the story of ISIS. 2019 was a victory for ISIS and for Russia. Everyone except Trump understood what the removal of the troops would mean, but Trump rejects any warning. It was clear that the mission to fight ISIS was not over. And the announcement to withdraw US troops from Syria was good news for ISIS to regain power and continue their mission, which is since centuries the same mission, fight the armies of Rome. In 2019, he does what he announced in 2018. He withdrew from Syria. And this was the Pyrrhic victory for Russia. It was Rafah, and it was a victory for ISIS. Now, in 2019, a new dispensation begins. The withdrawal of the US troops from Syria favors jihadism to rise again and motivates them. In their narrative, it means that they were able to drive the arch-enemy, the unbelievers or the crusaders, out of their country, just as they did in Afghanistan in 1989. They are able to defeat a world superpower. It's the narrative that counts. The victory was more important for them than we might think and than what the media portrays. 2020 is Concord, the increase of knowledge. Trump announces their withdrawal from Afghanistan, despite warnings that ISIS-K, which is the affiliated group of ISIS in Afghanistan, will rise. So the increase of knowledge of what will happen is there. This message gives hope to ISIS-K. 2021 is Exeter, the formalization. The withdrawal of the US troops from Afghanistan took place from May until August, despite warnings again. As a result, the Taliban took Kabul on August 15. The return of the Taliban is an important waymark in the story of the Third War because it strengthened ISIS-K, the Afghan affiliate of ISIS. So the warnings of what will happen when the US troops are removed were clear. It will enable ISIS-K to rise, and they are the threat to the army of Rome. With the withdrawal of the US troops and the return of the Taliban, thousands of ISIS fighters came out of the prisons. You can read this in this article of Business Insider. Exeter is announcing the coming waymark, which is in 2021 as well. After the US withdrew most of their troops and after the Taliban took Kabul, ISIS-K immediately showed their new strength. It is like cause and effect. Exeter predicted what will come next. And the effect was ISIS-K directly attacked the army of Rome. On August 26, ISIS-K attacked the US military at the Kabul airport and killed 13 soldiers and many civilians. It's a clear fulfillment of what was predicted. The Washington Post wrote, for months, terrorism analysts warned that Islamic State-linked militants in Afghanistan would try to turn the Biden administration's exit into a bloody spectacle. On Thursday in Kabul, those predictions were realized. So again, even the journalists call it a prediction. It is Exeter. Terrorism analysts knew it and warned about it. It was a prediction about the coming event. So our structure is absolutely valid. In the hours, reading here in the middle, in the hours before the attack, US and Western governments warned of a specific threat related to ISIS-K and urged people to stay away from the airport. An attack was said to be imminent and has now taken place. The blast at the airport today is showing that unfortunately a very bloody future is ahead of us. So we can clearly see in that dispensation that all precautions are done for ISIS to rise again to power. Their crisis, which they had in 2019 territorially, was over in 2021. They got the US out of Syria and out of Afghanistan. The removal of the US troops was announced in 2020, increase of knowledge under Trump. It was realized in 2021 under Biden, and with it came a warning and a prophecy, which is Exeter, and then the fulfillment of the predicted event, which was a deadly attack against the army of Rome. Now, the next dispensation is 2021 to the Sunday Law. The crisis of the Islamic State was over, especially ISIS-K is rising since that date. After the withdrawal, thousands of fighters came out of prison. ISIS-K committed the deadly attack on the US troops and demonstrated their power. They can now further strengthen and build up a worldwide network. In this new dispensation, 2021 is Boston. It's a beginning of a story leading up to the Sunday Law. I would suggest that 2022 is Concord, the increase of knowledge in that dispensation. In the internal line of the movement, I would mark the Vespers of Elder Tess as our increase of knowledge. And for me personally, the Vespers were the crucial message to understand why neither the right wing nor the left wing really understand Islam. And the Vespers were essential for the understanding of all of our other lines too. So she laid the groundwork. She gave us the increase of knowledge before she left it on us to dig out the remaining information of Exeter and the Sunday Law. Now, in our story of the third woe, in 2022, the ISIS-K attacked the Russian embassy in Afghanistan and show clear ambitions to attack the West. In the same year, another prison breakout takes place in Syria, where many ISIS fighters were freed. ISIS from Syria and ISIS-K from Afghanistan are spread worldwide. Their ideology is spread through social media and attracts thousands of people worldwide. Another important event in that dispensation is October 7, 2023, the attack by Hamas on Israel and the following war in Gaza. I think it was an important event in the further development in the story of the third woe. A CNN article says that ISIS sought to exploit the situation in Gaza within days of the October 7 attacks by Hamas. So all what happened on that day and in the aftermath had further strengthened ISIS. It was another turning point. I suggest that 2024 is Exeter. Reading from the same article, in January last year, which is 2021, ISIS spokesman called on Muslims to hunt your prey, the Jews, Christians, and their allies, in the streets and alleyways of America, Europe, and the world. And as in years before, ISIS urged followers to direct your actions at the easy targets before the difficult, the civilian targets before the military, and the religious targets such as synagogues and churches before anything else. So this is a formalization of their message. It is another declaration of war. On March 22nd, 2024, ISIS-K attacked Russia on Russian soil. It was a big orchestrated attack on a concert hall near Moscow with 145 people killed. This attack made clear that ISIS-K is well and alive, that they are able to do big, devastating, organized attacks on international ground. So they had a message, they made a declaration, and they manifested that they were able to realize it. In August 24, Foreign Affairs published an article with the headline, ISIS-K goes global, the world is not ready to confront a new international terror threat. Reading here the orange marked. The warning lights for large-scale violence, they concluded, are flashing as brightly today as in the years before 9/11. ISIS-K is among the most concerning given its capabilities and intent. ISIS-K, I'm sorry. I'm reading here below. ISIS-K conducts fewer strikes inside Afghanistan than it once did, and many of the attacks it has planned recently are designed to be more lethal and focus on high-profile targets abroad. Intelligence agencies and law enforcement organizations are rightfully on high alert, but the competitive turn in global politics had made it more difficult for them to coordinate their efforts. To quell the international threat that ISIS presents, countries will need to overcome this obstacle to effective counterterrorism. So this article covers the history after 2021, when they were able to reorganize and become more deadly and more international. They are pushing their propaganda globally and planning attacks worldwide. They are saying, after Moscow, who is next? And listing their names of 4 European cities, London, Madrid, Paris, and Rome. After the ISIS-K attack in Moscow in March, Christopher Wray, the FBI director, warned that the potential for a coordinated attack on US soil was increasingly concerning. Wray added, "As I look back over my career in law enforcement, I'm hard-pressed to come up with a time when I have seen so many different threats all elevated at the same time." I understand this as very clear warnings that were proclaimed here in 2024, which I understand to be Exeter. Now, this article, we already have looked at it before when we discussed 9/11. It was written in June 24, and I think this is also really prophetic. Just the headline, "The terrorism warning lights are blinking red again, echoes of the run-up to 9/11. So before 9/11, the CIA and FBI warned many times about what Osama bin Laden will do in short. The CIA director said that he had not the slightest doubt that Osama bin Laden is planning attacks against the USA. And his warnings were prophetic. In the next paragraph, the author compares the time before 9/11 with our time. So 2024 is compared to the time before 9/11. 2.5 decades later, this is now in 2024, Christopher Wray, the director of FBI, is sounding similar alarms like before 9/11. His discussions within the Biden administration are private, but his testimony to Congress and other public statements could not be more explicit. Yet, after Hamas attacked Israel on October 7, we have seen the threat from foreign terrorists rise to a whole nother level, he added. Wray is not the only senior official issuing warnings. Then they say, especially Islamic State Khorasan, which is ISIS-K, is among the most concerning. There is an elevated global threat environment. US Attorney General Merrick Garland, speaking about the possibility of a terrorist attack on the United States, said that the threat level has gone up enormously. Put simply, the United States faces a serious threat of a terrorist attack in the months ahead. So it is really imminent. They call particular attention to ISIS-K. He warned that the group would be able to carry out an operation against US or Western interests abroad in under 6 months with little to no warning. there had been several foiled plots. Foiled plots inside the United States should be the ultimate wake-up call. And in March, during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, ISIS-K spokesperson called on individuals to carry out lone wolf attacks on Christians and Jews in the United States, Europe, and Israel. When terrorist groups make explicit threats to the United States, Washington should listen. It is not uncommon for adversaries to say precisely what they're going to do, as bin Laden did before 9/11. So it is an exeter because the spokesperson of ISIS was calling on individuals to carry out attacks on the Christians, Jews in the USA and Europe and Israel, but also the service agencies, intelligence agencies in the United States also are warning that there are explicit threats to the United States. So it is twofold, the warning. And it is same as that happened before 9/11. I will skip that for time. Here they're writing again, ISIS-K poses the most immediate threat. They describe how they rise up since the troop withdrawal in 2021. For the past 2 decades, under both Republican and Democratic administrations, the efforts of thousands of Americans in the military and intelligence communities have spared the country a second 9/11 or worse. This is an extraordinary achievement, but the work is not done. A terrorist attack is a preventable catastrophe. As the threat increases, policymakers must rise to challenge to protect the US homeland. Now, with all the purging of the FBI and CIA that Trump is doing since he is in office, I wonder how this will continue. And we know Trump doesn't listen to any warning. When Bush didn't listen, Trump would not listen even less. I believe that the Sunday law is 2025. The shipwreck of the institution, which was announced and prepared in 24, has come into effect in January 2025. The lamb-like beast is speaking like a dragon. In my understanding, the speaking began in January. It looks democratic like a lamb, but speaks dictatorial like a dragon. So if my logic is correct, in the year of the Sunday law, the army of Rome will be hit by ISIS. It's a repetition of the year of 2001. The FBI director and others said in 2024, we are in the run-up to 9/11. I think that 2001 is pointing to 2025. The threat is twofold, lone wolf and orchestrated attacks. I have no idea what it will be, and I think we won't get more details beforehand. By definition, it will be suddenly and unexpectedly. It's not through such kind of prophecy that we should attract any people into the movement. A fulfilling just serves the purpose to confirm our waymarks and methodology. Now, the year 2025 began with the following event. In the early morning of the 2025 New Year celebrations in New Orleans, a man with an ISIS flag on his pickup drove into a crowd to destroy the New Year's celebrations of the Crusaders, the unbelievers in their words. It was not New Year in the Islamic calendar. It was only New Year in the Christian calendar. The name of this man, translated from Arabic, means the sun, the planet sun of the violent religion. So I think it was no coincidence that the year 2025 began with that attack. They declared their intentions in 24, and they are beginning to realize it in 25. It's the same what happened between 96 and 2001. They declared their intentions. They gave a foretaste of what they are capable to do with the attacks in 98 on the US embassies. And then came 9/11. I see the New Orleans attack as another confirmation of what might happen within this year on a bigger scale. And the threat is twofold: lone wolf attacks and orchestrated attacks. In the CNN video, there is another clear message. It's called "ISIS has made a comeback." Once thought beaten back and eliminated, ISIS-inspired terror attacks spiked in 2024. CNN's Nick Robertson reports on what has experts worried about the terror group's increase in activity. The bloody bounce back began several years ago, gaining global attention, killing 13 US troops as coalition forces pulled out of Afghanistan in 2021. But since then, most of ISIS recovering has not sparked massive global attention. 2025 might be the year that changes. Expert, if they can do something in the US, in Europe, in Russia, Turkey, Iran, Central Asia, if they can do it, they will do it, because for them, it's a global war. So we are looking now at the dispensation on the line of the 144,000, which is from 2001, pointing to the Sunday Law, 2025. In our story, the third woe against the army of Rome, the dispensation begins with 9/11. The third woe begins, the war on jihadist terrorism begins, the jihadist movement grows, develops, and spreads worldwide. This is Boston. 2019, the US withdrew their troops from Syria, which was a victory for ISIS, even if they looked territorially defeated. So this year, they disappeared from the surface, but their ideology was empowered. They continued underground in prisons, in camps, through social media. This is Concord. 2021, the US withdrew their troops from Afghanistan, which was another victory for ISIS, especially for ISIS-K. The crisis of ISIS was over. They reappeared at the surface. It re-energized jihadists around the world. Thousands of ISIS fighters were freed from prisons. Then, in the same year, ISIS-K manifested their deadly capability by an attack against the US military in Kabul. They attacked the army of Rome. This is Exeter. It's a foretaste, a visible sign, a prophecy of a future event. Now, the year 2025 began with an attack on US territory by an ISIS-inspired man in New Orleans. And I think we should watch carefully what will happen in the next time to come. Trump gives enough reason for the jihadists to hate the USA. This video was not made on his order, but he reposted it on February 26. It shows what he wants to make with Gaza. It contains every possible symbology that triggers their moral and traditional values enormously. It is luxury and licentiousness. The crusader, the Jew and Palestine on their holy ground. It is pure blasphemy. All of these pictures, the golden state image, everything is a direct attack against them. In an information warfare, it is an attack. It's the modern crusade that will not remain unanswered. So in summary, as I have explained in the first part of the study, I believe that the institution got finally shipwrecked in January 2025, pretending to be a democracy or a lamb, but speaking as a dragon. The election looked as being free and fair, but by definition was not. By doing this, they have committed the biggest sin which a democracy can commit. All institutions, both parties, the Congress, Senate, Supreme Court, and also the media are guilty of this sin. The people have not yet failed. Their test comes later, but the institution has failed. The glorious land is not glorious anymore. Now, in the second part, I have discussed the third woe by placing it on the line. We have seen the repeating pattern of Boston, Concord, Exeter, And we have seen that both the dispensation of 2001 to the Sunday law and of 2021 to the Sunday law point to an event with Isis at the Sunday law waymark. So I believe if my conclusions are right, they will be hurting again the army of Rome in the Sunday law waymark. I would like now to take a look at the line of the Magi, because we have the star being a harbinger to a future event. So this study is new. I have not yet shared it with any group. In my former studies, I have suggested that 9/11 is not only a harbinger to close of probation, but also to the Sunday law. In the movement, we said that 9/11 is not the fulfillment of the event, but a harbinger. Now, we paralleled this to the star that the Magi saw, the wise men from the east, which was a harbinger to the Messiah. They understood that the star is not the prophesied star Jesus, but a harbinger to him. The wise men were saying, "Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen the star in the east and are come to worship him." They asked, "Could this strange star have been sent as a harbinger of the promised one?" So in order to understand to which waymark the harbinger is pointing, we should take a closer look at the line of the Magi first. In 2017, Elder Tess gave her very first 3 public presentations in the movement. She presented Acts 27 and the line of the Magi. She began her study with the quote, "The story of Bethlehem is an exhaustless theme. In it is hidden the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. Those hidden treasures are found through our line-upon-line methodology." You can read the story of Bethlehem or the story of the Magi, which is found in Desire of Ages, chapter 6, and Matthew 2, for example. And I also recommend to watch the presentation of Elder Tess for more details. So at the time of the end, the wise men from the east who were studying the starry heavens and nature turned to the prophetic writings of the Old Testament. They understood that the prophesied coming of the Messiah was near. The test marked this as the increase of knowledge. The wise men had seen a mysterious light in the heavens upon that night when the glory of God flooded the hills of Bethlehem. So this was marked as the formalization of the message. This mysterious light came from the angels who appeared in front of the shepherds on the hills of Bethlehem to proclaim the message that the Messiah has been born. That means at that point, the Messiah has already been born. As the light faded, a luminous star appeared and lingered in the sky. The prophecy of Balaam had declared, "There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel." Could this strange star have been sent as a harbinger of the promised one? The Magi had welcomed this light of heaven-sent truth. Now it was shed upon them in brighter rays. Through dreams, they were instructed to go in search of the newborn prince. This Elder Tess marked at the 9/11 waymark. It is the star, which is the harbinger of the promised one. The star is paralleled with the dove and the voice from heaven at the baptism of Jesus. It is an outward sign. Continue reading the last paragraph. While they had the star before them as an outward sign, they had also the inward evidence of the Holy Spirit, which was impressing their hearts and inspiring them with hope. At this waymark, the Magi take the 3 gifts, the gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and start their journey following the star. At this waymark also, the leadership is passed by. Now they have reached the land of Israel and are descending the Mount of Olives with Jerusalem in sight, when lo, the star that has guided them all the very way rests above the temple, and after a season fades from their view. So this waymark is the increase of knowledge, which Elder Tess called sunset. Back in 2017, we did not have our structure of Boston, Concord, Exeter yet, and the waymarks had different names. So at this waymark, they descended the Mount of Olives and entered Jerusalem. When entering the city, the star disappeared from their view. They are disappointed because no one seems to have knowledge of the newborn king. The Jewish leaders show no interest in these news. Nevertheless, in Jerusalem, the Magi got an increase of knowledge about the birthplace of Jesus, which was predicted in the scriptures. They learned that they will not find Jesus in Jerusalem, but in Bethlehem. The next waymark, Elder Tess called Prediction Before Midnight, PBM. At this waymark, the Magi departed alone from Jerusalem. At this point, the Jews closed their door. Ellen White writes, while God was opening the door to the Gentiles, the Jewish leaders were closing the door to themselves. Now, as soon as they have left Jerusalem, the star reappeared. The wise men departed alone from Jerusalem. The shadows of night were falling as they left the gates, but to their great joy, they again saw the star and were predicted to Bethlehem. Directed to Bethlehem, sorry. So the star reappeared and directed them to Bethlehem. This was the prediction before midnight. Please note, it is a prediction to the next waymark. At the waymark of midnight, they arrived at Bethlehem. Matthew 2 says, the star which they saw in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. The star is standing over the house where Jesus is. That means the star is telling them in which exact house they find Jesus. Here's the point when they enter and see Jesus in the manger. This is when they see Jesus, the real star, the real morning star, or star from the east, who is the promised one. This is the fulfilling of the event. The harbinger was pointing exactly to that event. The harbinger stood above the house and directed them to go into the house to see Jesus, the morning star. And when they came, and when they were come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. So at this point, they fall down and worship, and they give the three gifts that they took with them when they started their journey, when they saw the star for the first time, which was at this waymark. Beneath the lowly guise of Jesus, they recognized the presence of divinity. So after they have seen Jesus in the manger, the Magi get an increase of knowledge about the nature of Jesus. They recognize that he is the living testimony. They see humanity and divinity combined. I think this is an increasing process in this dispensation, from the increase of knowledge to the loud cry. And White writes that the living testimony is manifested at the loud cry. This happens in the dispensation after they have seen Jesus in the manger. So the story continues with the persecution by Herod and the fleeing to Egypt. And this was basically the line as Elder Tess presented it in 2017. You can see her original boardwork here. And this line is paralleling the line of the 144,000, because the wise men are the watchmen They are the 5 wise virgins because they have the oil, they have the 3 gifts. That means they represent the movement. As we don't use the terms sunset and prediction before midnight anymore, I think we should place those waymarks on our working structure of Boston, Concord, Exeter. So midnight is midway. And midway is always the Sunday law waymark, the middle waymark of our lines. The prediction before midnight is Exeter. It's a prediction before midnight, which means it's a prediction to the Sunday law. So it must be 2021. Sunset is Concord. It's the increase of knowledge, which is 2019. Now, the story does not end at the Sunday law waymark. In Bethlehem, when they see the real star, they understand the nature of Jesus. They understand humanity and divinity combined, but it's progressive, it's a process and increase of knowledge, which happens in the Sunday law period under the latter rain. I'm open for discussion where to place this exactly. Now, after having worshipped the Messiah and given the 3 gifts, their journey was accomplished. They wanted to return to Jerusalem in order to go back to King Herod. But in a dream, they received a divine message to hold no further communication with him. Avoiding Jerusalem, they set out for their own country by another route. So this dream is the loud cry, which is a message of God. It's a prediction about Herod's evil plan. It predicts close of probation and time of trouble. They understand that the Messiah has an enemy. Maybe we can say they fully understand the great controversy at that point. Now, in like manner, Joseph received warning to flee into Egypt with Mary and the child. And the angel said, "Be thou there until I bring the word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him." Joseph obeyed without delay, setting out on the journey by night for greater security. That means not only the wise men, but also Joseph and Mary received this warning message. They were warned about the evil plan of Herod and were informed that they should bring themselves in security. In the dream, God told them where they should go. So Exeter is a message, it's a warning, it's a prediction, and the dream fulfills exactly that criteria. Then, at close of probation, the Magi return to their country in the east, and Jesus, Mary, and Joseph flee to Egypt. Because of the 3 gifts, they were able to afford the journey to Egypt. Now, Herod got mad because the Magi did not return to Jerusalem to tell him the birthplace of Jesus. So he executed his evil plan. Soldiers were at once sent to Bethlehem with orders to put to death all the children of 2 years and under. The quiet homes of the city of David witnessed those scenes of horror that 600 years before had been opened to the prophet. In Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children and would not be comforted because they are not. So this is the death decree. It is the time of trouble. This act of cruelty was one of the last that darkened the reign of Herod. Soon after the slaughter of the innocents, he was himself compelled to yield to that doom which none can turn aside. He died a fearful death. This time period is also the death of Herod. But when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeareth in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, "Arise and take the young child and his mother and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life." So this is another dream. It's another Exeter or formalization, another message. It's another dream where they receive a message by an angel of God. Instead of going to Bethlehem, Joseph was directed to go to Nazareth. He was also informed about Herod's death. Again, Joseph was directed to go to a place of safety. He returned to Nazareth, his former home, and here for nearly 30 years Jesus dwelt, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. So this is the last waymark. It's the fulfillment when they leave Egypt and finally return home to Nazareth. And Nazareth means the guarded one. This can only be heaven when we get home to our place of safety, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets. So it's the final waymark and the line is complete here. Now, what do we learn? A line is in vain if it would not give any lesson to God's people, right? I believe that what we should learn is that we must recognize the star, the harbinger, in order to have the experience with our Savior in the Sunday law period. This is the dispensation when we understand the nature of Christ, where humanity and divinity is combined, where we are the living testimony. The Magi did not come empty-handed to that special event at the Sunday law waymark. We should make sure that we have the oil and the 3 gifts already prepared. It's a sincere and uncorrupted faith and a pure character, which means a full understanding and living of the equality message. The star is pointing to the Sunday law waymark, to Jesus, the morning star. At this point, we should fall down and worship the Messiah and offer our 3 gifts to him. At this point, I mean, when we see the star staying over the house. So what means Bethlehem for us, and what is our harbinger to Bethlehem? 9/11 is the harbinger pointing to Bethlehem. As we have seen, Bethlehem is midway, which is the national Sunday law waymark. And the star itself is not the event. The event is to have an experience with Jesus, to begin to see divinity and humanity combined, to fall down and worship him, to give the 3 gifts that we have prepared. The star is just the outward sign that directs us to that experience. So at 9/11, we have seen the east wind hitting the ship. The east wind is Al-Qaeda and then ISIS. It's not the event of 9/11 that is seen as the following waymarks, but it is the east wind. Sorry, I repeat that. It's not the event of 9/11 that we see at all of those waymarks where we see the star, but we see the east wind at those waymarks. The east wind did not abate according to Acts 27. So I believe that the east wind arriving at 9/11 is paralleling the star. It is the outward sign that is directing us to the Sunday law waymark. 9/11 was confirming our line upon line methodology. It was a hidden truth that had been found. An angel came down to confirm our message, which was the message about the Sunday law. It was a harbinger to the Sunday law. Now in 2019, the harbinger disappeared from the surface. The star was not visible for the Magi when they entered Jerusalem. In 2019, ISIS lost almost all of their territory, as we have seen shortly before. They seemed to be territorially defeated. They disappeared from the surface. They were in a big crisis, even though their ideology continued to be spread underground. But in 2021, the star reappeared. In 2021, the crisis of ISIS was over, as we have seen in our study with the withdrawal of the US troops from Afghanistan and the return of the Taliban. The crisis ended. They were visible again. They attacked the US military in Afghanistan and showed their new strength. They were re-energized. So the star, the outward sign, was visible again for everyone to see. It was directing them to Bethlehem. The star was standing over the house where they found Jesus, the real morning star from the east. Therefore, 9/11 is a harbinger to the Sunday law. The star, the east wind, is visible at 9/11, it is visible at 2021, and it is visible at the Sunday law. When we see the east wind at the Sunday law waymark, this should be our outward sign to point us to the Messiah. It means that we will go into an experience. We will begin to have an increase of knowledge about divinity and humanity combined and understand Christ's nature. And we have to be prepared because it still might look different than we expect. An event with ISIS is not the fulfillment, it's just another outward sign. The fulfillment is Jesus, to understand his character. It's all pointing to our experience with Jesus. But we have to be prepared in advance with the oil and the 3 gifts, with a pure character and an unwavering faith, with a full understanding and practicing of the equality message. Paul understood the phenomenon of the east wind. He had studied the laws of nature. The Magi understood the star. They had studied nature and the starry heavens. The star was guiding them all the way through. Since the beginning, the star was pointing to only one specific waymark, the Sunday law, to see Jesus in the manger, to understand his true nature and deliver the 3 gifts to him. So I believe the most important lesson that we should learn from the study is that we should examine ourselves. Now is the time to make sure that we have the oil, the frankincense, gold, and myrrh. We have to investigate ourselves if we really live equality in our family, in our environment, in the movement. It really troubles me to see that there are still problems that we have with each other in the movement. These things need to be dealt with. There is no time for compromise for the sake of the union anymore. Otherwise, we commit the same sin as the northern states or as the Democrats commit. So the Magi still expected Jesus to be born as a child of a king with kingly guards, etc. But when they saw the baby, even if he looked different than expected, they understood the nature of Christ and saw in him divinity and humanity combined. So we should be prepared that things might still look different to what we expect. And as individuals and as a movement, we really should ask ourselves if we are ready for that event. Okay, that was my study. I think I will close with prayer and then we will do our question and answer, right? So let's pray. Dear God, thank you for being with us. Thank you for giving us all those lines to show us where we are in history, where we are at the end of this world, to leave us not in darkness, to give us outward signs that guide us. I ask you that we be prepared for what is coming next, that we are able to investigate ourselves, that we are able to change, to be corrected. Please give us an unwavering faith in you and make us pure. I thank you for all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.